You got them back. Now, how do you keep them? Hello there, I'm Coach Abby. Thank you once again for joining me on Love Advice TV. Love Advice TV is a channel that has been created uniquely for you to assist you in navigating through any relationship challenges. So, today's topic is not about the chase. It's about what happens after the chase. So, we sometimes think that we can go right back to where we started from. Not so fast. Because while everyone focuses on the strategies to get an ex back, few ask the harder questions. How do I keep them? So reconciliation is not the end of the journey. Actually, it's the beginning of a new one. And it's a fragile, beautiful opportunity to rebuild a love that is not just restored, but stronger, deeper, and wiser than before. But here's the truth. If you go back to old habits, unresolved issues, or reactive patterns, the relationship will crumble again. So getting them back, yes, it's a victory. Feels amazing. But keeping them is a mastery. And that's what we're going to build together today. To understand how to keep them, we must first understand why many reconciled relationships fail. And they do. They keep going back and forth, and it's what I call that breakup loop. It's back and forth and back and forth. So it's important to understand that so we don't fall into that. So complacency plays a big part of this. People relax once they've won them back, per se. Forgetting that attraction must be nurtured continuously. You say, oh, Abby, we're back where everything's good. Well, what new habits have you implemented? Well, no, Abby, we really don't need to. No, not so fast. You will position yourself to go right back to where you were before you were able to once again get them back. It's important. The breakup created pain. Don't forget that. If that pain isn't acknowledged and transformed, it resurfaces as resentment. There's what I refer to as an emotional imbalance. One partner may still be feeling insecure, trying too hard to prove worth, while the other withdraws. This imbalance, once again, erodes stability. There's a lack of communication. We're not talking about what happened. We're just trying to pick up where we left off. And where we left off was a breakup. And we have to be sensitive to the fact when there is a lack of evolution. If both partners return to who they were before, the same issues will naturally repeat because reconciliation without transformation is just repetition. To keep them, you must build differently. Keeping your ex is not about constant performance or fear of losing them again. No, it's about embodying a philosophy of lasting permanence, of love, one that grows stronger instead of weaker over time. Now, this philosophy rests typically on three principles: stability, respect, and not love, expansion. Let's talk about stability. A relationship that feels calm and grounded becomes irresistible compared to chaos or insecurity. Many times even to feel that they love us, we create situations that are a little chaotic just to test those waters. Plus, it's familiar. Chaos can become familiar to us. That's the way we communicate. And trust me when I say that's not what we're looking for. Respect is so important as well. Respect means more than politeness. It's about valuing boundaries, individuality, and the unique essence of your partner. I talk quite a bit about our essence, and I think it's so important to be able to identify with our essence because that's who we are. But we need to also understand the essence of our partner and be sensitive to that. When I talk about expansion, Love thrives when it expands. And this is why I don't refer to the third being love. It's the expansion of love. Growth must be constant, both as individuals and as a couple. When stability, respect, and expansion become the bedrock of your new relationship, reconciliation matures into something not only special, but durable. You know, we sometimes feel we can pick up where we left off after so many shattered glasses from the relationship. It's not necessarily true, and we're not even sure how much damage has been done. So if you're not even sure whether your relationship has the foundation for stability, respect, and expansion, please take the free assessment questionnaire below. It will help you identify where you stand, where your strengths are, and where your relationship still needs your attention. It's so important for us to self-analyze. It's not about being guilty, and it's not about mea culpa. It's about knowing our truths. We need to know our truths. Let's break this into a practical framework. So we talk about the 5 pillars of keeping love alive. I usually love to use pillars or examples or anything like that because it allows us to implement a strategy. And even when we go back to our videos, many of these pillars are not for us, but there might be one that is. So we can resonate and go right back to it without having to review the whole entire script. So this is why I love to separate it into different pillars and what have you. So let's talk about pillar number 1. We need to be very sensitive to conscious communication. And what I mean by that, we fail to understand that words can either heal or harm. So to keep love alive, you must practice deliberate speech. You need, it's speaking truth with kindness. It's listening with openness and replacing reaction with reflection. It's not about, Abby, I'm just being authentic. I have to let them know, wait a minute, not so fast. You can, but with kindness. There's no reason to force yourself upon them because we have to have that empathy to see things through their lens. They might not see it as we see it. The pillar number 2 is basically our emotional security. And what does that mean? Love cannot flourish in fear. When both partners feel that they're walking on eggshells, or one of them, they need to feel secure. They need to feel secure in their worth, secure that they're being chosen, secure in the bond that they've created. So your calm, consistent presence creates this foundation. One of the many things that I find that contribute to breakups is when we're continuously threatening the breakup. We're in a nice relationship. Something doesn't happen. Well, I'm breaking up and this and that. And it becomes part of, of our dialogue. And that threatens our safety. It threatens, our security within the relationship. And we need to be sensitive to making sure that our partners feel safe at all times, regardless of whether we agree or disagree. They feel safe in the relationship. The third pillar is the consistency of affection. Now, immediately we think about hugging and kissing, and no. Affection is not just grand gestures. It's the steady stream of attention, of appreciation for your partner. And yes, of intimacy. Attraction is fed not by the occasional spark, but by the daily glow. We talk about something that I think is important. Women, in my experience, have demonstrated to be intimate when they have a connection of sorts. Men connect through intimacy. So from the get-go, we are a little bit different when it comes to that. So it's important to realize if you're significant woman other is not being intimate, it's because she doesn't feel connected. And if he is also a little detached, maybe intimacy will help him to reconnect. So it's one of these things that you have to sort of navigate and guide yourself by instinct before you pull back all the way one way or the other. Then on our pillar number 4 is the balance of self and union. To keep them, you cannot dissolve into them. So the healthiest reconciliation is one where both individuals remain whole while nurturing the union. Independence and togetherness must coexist. They must balance and dance and balance, how I refer to it. And it's true. You can't, it's the yin and the yang. They can coexist, but we can't just be one. We don't want that. And finally, the 5th pillar is shared growth. So a reconciled relationship cannot stay frozen in the past. You must both walk forward. You must learn and explore and evolve. I have a client that I'm working now that has been in a really bad spin because, yes, he was unfaithful. Even though they were broken up at the time, he was unfaithful. And she keeps bringing it up over and over and over. And, once we make that decision that we're going to try, don't bring it up anymore. Work on it, heal yourself through it, but it's not necessary to keep inviting it back into the relationship. You have to realize that growth demonstrates that we have grown, that it's what makes the love dynamic and future focused. It's not past focused. These pillars, as I call them, if we live them daily, either one, the other, or collectively, they create the conditions for permanence. So, it's interesting because we feel so excited that we're back with our exes and we forget that there was a breakup. And if we haven't fixed what we had, Einstein would say, if you do the same thing over and over and expect different results, it's a sign of insanity. Don't be insane. If you're not too sure how to deal with this, do not hesitate, please, to have a coaching session with me. You don't have to figure these things out by yourself. You can either rewind the videos, you can see all our library of our video, but if you want that one-on-one, just book a coaching session with me. It will be my pleasure to help guide you through this process. It's an easy process once you see it. It'll allow you to focus on the subtle art of rebuilding trust, because trust is also the oxygen of any reconciliation. Without it, the relationship slowly but surely suffocates. And what I mean by that is one of us will feel insecure and will feel things are not going in their, as they envisioned it. And they start hovering and they start asking and they start becoming there and texting and wondering and asking for explanation. And we suffocate it. So, we have to realize that to rebuild trust is a process. Be transparent. No hidden motives. No secretive actions. Openness clears the shadows. You need to demonstrate to be reliable. Small promises kept daily matter more than big speeches. Sometimes we talk about all this and that, and we're not coming through for the things that we've promised to do. Reliability builds unshakable confidence, and that's such a cornerstone of a relationship. We need to learn to be accountable. Earn your mistakes, and swiftly. Doesn't mean, you know about it, not saying, just attack it. Yes, I was wrong. Avoid defensiveness. Responsibility heals. Trust can never be rebuilt just by ourselves. It's rebuilt by consistent integrity, by both keeping each other accountable, by, sharing the same vision. It needs to be love without, any type of demand of being together just because. It demands designing a future together. And it's important to sometimes have those hard talks, because we need to define what you both want, not only today, but in the next year, 5 years, 10 years. We do business plans when we're building a business. Why don't we do it with our relationship? What are the things that we need to concentrate in order to be able to grow in our relationship? We need to discuss values, family, growth, lifestyle, purpose. When we let our family dynamics come into our relationship, it's not a good place. You immediately take your partner and you remove them from the pedestal. You remove them from being your partner. And people do not like to feel that they are an option, because you should not make them feel as an option. And yes, we all come, specifically as the older we get, with certain baggages and what have you. But we need to be able to define that if we are choosing a partner, that partner has to supersede everything and everyone in order for them to feel worthy of continuing with this relationship. And if not, it'll just fizzle away. That also happens with lifestyle. If one of you, do not like a certain things of a person's lifestyle, if you don't agree to modify it, it'll fizzle away. So these are hard conversations, but the conversations we need to have. You need to align your future goals so that reconciliation becomes a forward path, not a return to the past. See, when your ex sees not just the present, but all of a sudden a shared horizon with you, they feel safe in choosing the relationship again and again. And that's what we need to focus on. We need to focus always on reattracting, on choosing the relationship again, not going back to what we had. And just because we're together and we're posing on social media as a couple again, that things are perfect. Now we need to grow, and we need to continue that dialogue open, and we need to continue our transformation. I, for one, will continue my own personal journey, my own growth transformation until I take my last breath. I invite you to do the same. So as always, allow me to please leave you with some food for thought, and it's important. Remember that getting your ex back is a triumph, without a doubt, but keeping them requires mastery. Relationships collapse when wounds remain unhealed, when growth stops, or when old patterns resurface. But relationships endure when you commit to a philosophy of stability, of respect, and of expansion. They ensure that when you practice conscious communication, you are creating an emotional security. You're showing consistent affection. You are balance independence with togetherness. One cannot be more than the other. You begin to grow as a unit. It is so important. It's teamwork. They endure when trust is rebuilt deliberately and when a shared future gives meaning to the present, not the past. Keeping your ex isn't about fear. It isn't about clinging. It's about building something so stable, so respectful, and so expansive that love not only lasts, it flourishes. Thank you once again for joining me today. And please do not hesitate to like and subscribe for more tips on personal growth, mending broken relationships, and everything in between. Until next time, I'm Coach Abby.